I'm Karen Hartglass. You are listening to It's All About Food. And here we are in the month of March. And I always like to talk about gardening around this time. And I have with me Ellen Ecker Ogden, who has a new book out called The New Heirloom Garden, Designs, Recipes, and Heirloom Plants for Cooks Who Love to Garden. Ellen Ecker Ogden is a Vermont writer and the author of The Complete Kitchen Garden and other books on food and gardens. She co-founded the Cook's Garden Seed Catalog, introducing cooks and gardeners to European specialty vegetables, herbs, and flowers. She graduated with a degree in fine arts and attended cooking school with Marcella Hazan in Venice, Italy, and at the Ballymaloe School in Shanagarry, Ireland. Her articles and kitchen garden designs have appeared in numerous national publications, including the New York Times, Martha Stewart Living, Better Homes and Gardens, and Country Gardens. And Ellen is here with me now on It's All About Food. Hi, Ellen.
Oh, hi, Karen. What a lovely introduction. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I believe that your background in the fine arts is so perfect with gardening and cooking because they are all, in my opinion, fine arts.
Right, exactly. But they all require a certain foundation that you need to start with in order you can spring off and do your own thing.
Absolutely. Craft, skill, experience, failures.
A lot, yes.
I've just finished reading your book and it's absolutely gorgeous. It's full of beautiful pictures of some of my favorite things, fruits and vegetables. And I love the garden designs. I have to be honest with you, when I first agreed to interview you and review this book, I just thought it was about gardening and designs, and I didn't realize it had all those recipes in the end. So we'll get to that too. And the other thing that I didn't know that was going to be in this book. Why would I know? I was just making some assumptions about a garden book. I don't know why, but you have different interviews in here under the label of Seed Talk, and I love those. So let's jump in a little bit. And I made some notes. In your first section, oh God, I'm looking at these gorgeous pictures of tomatoes in the Ark of Taste Garden, Endangered Species. You talk about preserving culinary history. What does that mean?
Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm being quizzed. I will answer that question, but I want to step back a little bit because you did mention the seed talk with the experts. And I'd love to explain how I came to write this book.
Okay.
I am no expert on heirloom designs or heirloom seeds. And, you know, I think people assume when you write a book, you're an expert on it. So that's why you're writing about it. But for me, it started with a deep curiosity. And I primarily a cook. That's my background. I love to cook. And I was asked I had written the book, The Complete Kitchen Garden. So I kind of was a self-taught garden designer. And I was asked by Garden Design Magazine to do a couple of heirloom garden designs for an issue they were doing on heirloom gardens. And I thought, what is an heirloom garden? I mean, what is it? And so I called a bunch of people. I called some experts that I know, Amy Goldman, and who's written a couple books on heritage garden varieties and things. And I said, what's an heirloom seed? Describe what is the definition? And she sort of laughed at me and said, you know, heirlooms are open pollinated seeds, and open pollinated means you can grow them again year after year. So that was the first start. And then I started calling other people I know. So the seed experts part of the book was really my education on why grow an heirloom garden and what is an heirloom garden. And it's really ephemeral, you know, it's really, you can't describe what it is, but it involves all of the senses, the smell and the taste and the sight and the memories and all those things that we expect a garden to have. It can be in an heirloom garden design.
Yes, and all those things that many of us have forgotten and lost the ability to even know how to appreciate them or experience them because of commercialization and capitalism and monocropping and all that other dark stuff. I love talking about this because this is something beautiful and bright and something many people can do And I think something we really need to be doing, because this diversity, the things that we've lost, some of it hasn't been lost, and we need to cultivate all of those wonderful seeds, so many hundreds of thousands of varieties out there that need to hit our taste buds.
Right. Well, so there's lots of different reasons. In the book, in the beginning, I have my 10 reasons to grow an heirloom garden. And the first one is flavor. You know, I feel that a lot of the heirloom varieties, you know, we think of tomatoes, but there's so many different kinds. If you lined up 12 different beans, they'd look the same, but they would taste very different. And I found by doing tasting trials that the heirlooms were always the best flavorful. I mean, take an Annalino bean, which is an Italian variety that grows like a beautiful little hook. We used to put them in our ears and pretend that they were earrings. You know, they're just adorable little beans, but they are incredibly delicious. And so flavor is number one. And number two, of course, is fragrance. A lot of the seed catalogs have been selling us on hybrid seeds because they're disease resistant or stronger stems or longer in the vase or whatever it is that they think we want as gardeners, where old-fashioned fragrance has, you know, the first instinct when you see a flower is you want to smell it. And then there's such a disappointment when it doesn't have fragrance. You go, oh, that's pretty. And you know, but really we want flowers with fragrance. And so there's just so many reasons to be growing heirlooms that really largely have to do with pure pleasure. In
your seed talk, the first person you interviewed in the book was Will Bonsall.
Yes.
And I've spoken with him on this program, and he's a very fascinating and somewhat eccentric individual, but he has so much knowledge. And I wish there was a way to tap into that, because the world needs what he has worked so hard on his own little piece of property, but also with his seed bank.
Right, the Scatter Seed Project, and he's done that wonderful film. And when I talked to him, he was pretty much the one person I spoke to that had that sort of doomsday approach to seed saving.
Yeah.
You know, I save seeds because I love to be able to share them with other seeds, because he's worried about the future of seeds. He says that 94% of our food crops have been lost in the 19th century. And
wow.
And, you know, you look at apple trees. There used to be, back in the 18th and 19th century, there were 15,000 different kinds of apple trees, and now we're down to less than maybe 900 varieties. So there is that risk, but I prefer not to go into that doomsday part of it, but I definitely am aware of it. And especially now with, you know, so many people wanting to grow gardens, and there's this all in the news, this idea that you can't get seeds from the seed catalogs, or you have to wait and so on. And if people realize that they could grow most of their own seeds, they wouldn't be waiting in line to buy the seeds. They could just have them and share them with friends.
Have them and share them with friends. What fun is that? Yeah, the other thing that Will Bonsall shared with me, something I never really thought about before, but it's quite profound. And that is, we get our nutrients from the soil, and that goes into the food. We eat the food, and then we need to put it back. And he tries to keep everything contained in his property, on his property. It's like sustainable. But what we do now is we're digging petrochemicals out of the Earth's crust and using them as fertilizers, and that's causing a lot of climate change. But there's so much import and export and moving around, and it's a wonderful thing because we can try different things from all parts of the world, but we're draining places of nutrients and not putting them back.
You know, as a home gardener, we have a responsibility to the land that we live on, and a responsibility to the earth to treat it with respect. And that's how I start my book, is talking about, you're going to put in a garden, just don't go out and just dig a hole or slap together raised beds. You're doing more than just growing food. You're creating a lifestyle, you're creating a sanctuary, you're creating a nurturing environment for yourself and for nature around you. And so when we're feeling like we can't do anything about the world, there's a wonderful quote: when the world ceases to satisfy, there's always the garden. And that's, you know, that's why I garden.
Now you have 10 designs in your book for different gardens. They all have different themes, and you're growing different food. Very often you recommend putting a bench in the garden because it's such a lovely thing to create this beautiful atmosphere. And then take the time to sit in it and enjoy it, right?
Oh, Karen, you did a beautiful job reading my book. Thank you. That is one of the major, that's the focus of all of my garden talks. Is I always say, if you go away with just one thing, just put a bench in your garden. And actually, while you're at it, put two. I do feel that we don't take time. It's not lazy sitting on the bench. It's really just nurturing ourselves and our creativity and watching who's visiting the garden. It's amazing what I've seen when I just sit quietly on the bench and I can see the dragonflies and the birds, and I noticed everything buzzing around me, which is there all the time. I just don't take the time to notice.
It's not quite the same thing, but when I clean my apartment, after it's all done, I like to sit down and have a cup of tea and just appreciate it being clean for a short moment in time.
I think we can all relate to that.
My favorite of all of the garden designs is the Italian heirloom garden. I lived in Europe for a while, and I love the arbors over the table outside where people will gather to eat and have these lovely meals together. And it also, and your Italian garden has that, and it also has the pizza oven. Mm-hmm. And those are just two things, both me and my partner, Gary, we both want that so badly.
Oh, I hope you get it someday. That sounds great. I know. Well, I don't have a pizza oven in my garden either, but I keep saying you got to always keep something beautiful in your mind.
Right. Yeah. Well, that was my favorite, but all of them are really, really very lovely. And I call them dreamy because they really take you somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
This book just came out, but have people taken these designs that you've done and recreated them?
Well, that's a good question. Not yet. It just came out in February. In my first book, The Complete Kitchen Garden, was kind of my my primer on how to design a garden. It's really what I consider to be a pretty basic book for anybody just starting out. And most of those gardens were based on gardens that I went to see. I visit gardens a lot for my ideas. And so I kind of came up with sketches. I love to draw things when I'm in a garden. But this book here was mostly sort of designed to be what I like to consider like a good recipe. I want people to look at it, to read it. There's lots of design techniques and tips with all of those gardens, and then close the book and then just do your own thing. So I don't really expect people to do exactly the Italian garden, but maybe get some ideas for what to grow, and maybe set up a 5-year plan for that pizza oven that they want to put in at some point.
Someday. In the beginning of the book, you talk about when you're starting a garden, and like you just mentioned, you said you're not an expert, you're just someone who loves to garden and has a lot of experience with it now. So there isn't a lot of how to step-by-step detail, but you do mention if you're designing a garden that you should take some twine and sticks and things and set up the space before you start digging.
Wow. Yes, you really did read that. That's exactly. Well,
I passed the test, but I read all the books I talk about. Thank you for that. But I thought it was a great tip. Yeah. When I've decorated spaces, I'll do it on paper and make things fit. But to visually see something before you take the shovel to it is a great idea.
Yeah, well, it's very important in terms of siting. It's what the professionals do when they're siting a garden. They'll stand in front of a window and make sure it's square and fits that space. But one of the things I do when it's indoors, I'm in Vermont and we still have, 3 feet of snow outside, and I can't get out in the garden probably for another couple of months. But when I'm designing a garden, I'll actually get masking tape and put it on the rug, and then I'll put pillows to figure out where the plants go and make sure there's a wide space for the path. So I do a lot of indoor gardening. It kind of makes me feel like I'm in 2nd grade again, and I'm playing house or something.
Well, that's important, to be childlike with everything we do.
There you go.
Or so they say. But I think that's a good thing that they say, whoever they are. So it's March, and you just said there's snow on the ground. Is there a good time to start gardening?
Well, I consider gardening a year-round activity, so to speak. For me, it's a year-round passion. I mean, I never stop thinking about the garden, and it really is 12 months out of the year. But yet we put a lot of our energy this time of year into seeds and starting seeds and getting out there. Usually by September, we're pretty exhausted and we don't want anything to do with the garden. The weeds have gotten too bad, or whatever. I like every month of the year. But in my garden, I'll start seeds probably the 1st of April, and then I'll be able to put them out after the frost-free date, which is usually the end of May.
Let's see, on page 68, you have a list of foods, and you talk about each one of them. And they're not very exotic foods, but you talk about how it's important to choose the ones or grow the ones that have a lot of color. And I'm really into nutrition and health, and so I say yes to that. When I first discovered purple potatoes, I was nuts about them. And I also learned that they may actually, from a health standpoint, they have been shown in some experiments to be able to kill stem cells of cancer stem cells, which is a very fabulous thing and very unusual. And also it may be the anthocyanins that give them that purple color. I'm not really sure, but I love them, period. Yeah. And purple sweet potatoes as well. And purple carrots. Who knew that the original carrot was purple and not orange?
Exactly. And it has 400 times more vitamin A than an orange carrot. So I'm so glad you brought that up, Karen, because that particular design is called the Color Wheel Garden. And when I learned that the original tomato was tiny, like smaller than your fingernail, and it was purple, and it was found high in the Andes mountain, and it's so puckery that nobody wanted to eat it. No wonder they thought it was poisonous, because it practically was. And same with purple potatoes and purple carrots. They're the original vegetables. And then plant breeders decided, we need sweeter. People won't eat them if they're sweet, unless they're sweet. And nobody likes purple. Let's make them white or make them orange. So, plant breeding has been changing what we consider to be. So what we consider to be normal now is really not normal.
Yeah. and why did we get away from purple? I thought purple was a regal color. Yeah, who knows?
It's true. And something like onions is also interesting. Like in the book, you'll see that the whole list of highest nutritional vegetables, and onions, I have now absolutely ruled out buying Walla Walla sweet onions, because they're not as nutritional as a really nice deep red onion
that make you cry.
That make you cry. I mean, when we were kids, we would cut onions and we'd cry, but now we don't cry anymore because they're so high. They don't have that sulfur that makes us cry. They're bred to be too sweet. So anyways, find onions that make you cry. There you go.
Crying is good. It really feels, when I cry after cutting an onion, it feels like a sauna or a steam bath. Like I've detoxed a little, It's a good thing. Pain is good sometimes.
And bitter is good too. That's the other thing, is that when I went to study with Marcella Hazan in Italy, I went to study because we were growing a lot of chicory, as are bitter. And we're trained really not to like bitter. And I couldn't figure out how to prepare chicory without having it bitter. And I learned from Marcella that it's supposed to be bitter. So embrace bitter. And bitter is actually really healthy, especially in the spring. It's like a spring tonic for your system. Bitter just completely cleanses you from all the heavy foods we've been eating all winter. You
can learn to love bitter. And it really depends on what your motivation is. I know we want to keep this happy and upbeat, and I'm going to do that. But I did have advanced ovarian cancer in 2006, and it was a 15-month journey, and it was pretty short. And then I'm well, and I'm thriving now. But one of the things that I did was really up the dark leafy green vegetables that I was consuming, and I learned to love the bitter vegetable. I knew it was good for me. Yep. And I loved it for that reason. Right. And now I just love it.
Well, that's good. I know. I don't think it has to be a trade-off between health and flavor. And when you can embrace them both and put them together, it really benefits your body.
Well, our society, unfortunately, has been manipulated to enjoy oil, sugar, and salt. And we've we've kind of coated our taste buds and we don't know what we're experiencing. So let's clean our taste buds and get into the garden and really start experiencing these great flavors.
Right. Well, there's a quote that I especially love that goes, listen to your broccoli and your broccoli will tell you how to eat it. And I attribute it to Anne Lamott, but I don't know if she really said it. I think it was in a Mel Brooks movie or something, but I use that as an example that when you buy broccoli at the store, you're probably going to overcook it. But if you grow your own, you have a tremendous respect for it and you watch it grow from seed to plate. In 95 days, it takes a long time to grow a head of broccoli. And that broccoli is not only going to taste better, but it's going to make you feel good that you grew that own broccoli. And then of course, you're going to have the wonderful health benefits of going straight from garden to table in less than 5 minutes. So many reasons to grow food.
Yes. You talk in one of the Seed Talk articles that commercial seed growers keep secrets, and in the organic community we all share information. This whole concept of sharing seeds and how our society is going off, in at least mainstream capitalistic society, is going off in the wrong direction when it comes to food and when it comes to seeds, how we're minimizing diversity, and there are companies that want to own all our seeds and want to make them not able to reproduce or not enable us to sell seeds. It's become very dark. And yet sharing seeds and growing and creating and giving them away, it's such a beautiful thing that we definitely need to bring back.
Right. Yes. And that interview was with Frank Morton, who owns a catalog called Wild Garden Seeds, which is one of my favorite sources for buying my arugula and chervil and lettuces. And I just love what he grows. But he taught young farmers, he felt that they needed to become seed savers and seed catalogs. And maybe you've noticed, but there's a real surge in smaller seed companies emerging right now, which is very exciting to see. Instead of the big, mainstay catalogs, we're able to pick and choose from different wonderful smaller seed suppliers and more specialized. So there's a lot going there. I totally agree with you.
You have some heirloom seed stories, and you mentioned the melon moon and stars, where the seeds were rescued in 1981. First of all, I don't understand why we started making watermelons without seeds.
I agree.
Why they felt like we needed watermelons without seeds. I always thought watermelons with seeds were fun. You can spit them at all your friends, but just a crazy thing we humans do. But I would really like to try the moon and stars. Do I have to grow it myself to find it?
Probably. It's a long day melon, so I've had a hard time growing them here in Vermont. I can grow the smaller cantaloupes, but again, that's the other thing about seeds that's fascinating, is I feel that we've lost this whole heritage around geography in seeds, that certain seeds are bred to be northern seeds and southern seeds and those grown around, and we just think of seeds as seeds, but we forget that really there's regional differences. And going back to what is an heirloom, a lot of the heirloom varieties have wonderful names. So like Moon and Stars watermelon is such a cool name because it has those little stars on it and then one big moon on it. And then there's the Jenny Lind, a melon that was named after a famous singer, and the Aunt Molly's Cape Gooseberry. And, there's all these great names, the Jimmy Nardello pepper, which it looks like a frying pepper, but it's a sweet pepper. And the seeds were brought over from Italy by the Nardello family. And now everybody gets to grow them because they brought just a few seeds back. And that's one of the fun things about being a seed saver. And I have to mention the Seed Savers Exchange because, they have been building the heirloom seed community for over 30 years, maybe 40 years. And they have a wonderful thing called a yearbook. So if you sign up as a member, I think it's, you know, a minimal fee of $25, you get this big catalog of seed savers from around the world who want to share their seeds, and they have descriptions, and you can write away for their seeds and you can trade seeds with them. And it's just this huge network of seed savers that's so exciting.
It is very exciting. What I would like to see is that people get away from their groomed lawns and landscaping with bushes that are just ornamental and really get into these edible gardens, because your book is just one example, but they are so beautiful. And also we can enjoy the fruits, literally, and the vegetables and the herbs, and people should be more encouraged. And unfortunately, there are some neighborhoods where you can't grow a garden in your front lawn, which is really ridiculous, but more people should be doing that. Now, I live in New York City.
Yes.
I can't garden. I have a terrace and I try and grow things on my terrace. I do the best that I can do, but I'm still dreaming of a little place where I can garden. I wanted to talk about the recipes. Now, you need to know I'm a vegan since 1988.
Okay.
And I thumbed through the recipes, and they're full of fruits and vegetables, but they use a lot of products that I don't use. And I think just about every recipe I can make vegan, because they're made with butter and cream and eggs. And we have vegan substitutes. I use cashew cream instead of heavy cream. I'll use, there's all kinds of wonderful vegan butters on the market. I even make my own sometimes. So there are plenty of substitutes for those things. So the one that caught my eye was the caramelized Leek Tart. And I substituted a number of ingredients. It's funny because I create my own recipes and then I go back to those recipes and I change them again. So I'm always changing. Recipes are dynamic for me. They're never the same. But when I decided to make yours, so there were a few ingredients I substituted. You have ricotta in the filling, and I make an almond ricotta. I call it crack. I just love it. It's just almonds and has a little miso in it. Oh. So good. And then I make my own cashew yogurt. So you put yogurt in the crust, and I use my cashew yogurt. I tend to not use sugar very much, and I'm incorporating dates more often. So for the brown sugar that you sauteed with the leeks, I use dates. And I prefer to eat gluten-free. I don't have celiac or anything like that, but wheat gives me some problems. So I made a crust with oats, millet, and garbanzo bean flour, and then the cashew yogurt. Wow. And I have to say, I make a lot of gluten-free crusts, and this was my most favorite ever. This may be my new go-to crust.
It's an easy crust. It's true. I've never been able to do the regular. I mean, I do on occasion, the butter and the flour, the classic one, but this is easy. There's something about the yogurt that brings it all together, and you don't have to chill it. So you just simply roll it out and it works every time. Yeah, it did. And the gluten-free, sometimes a little more challenging because without the gluten, you don't have that elasticity and that gumminess. And some people add things like xanthan gum, which I'm trying to avoid using because that doesn't sit well with me either. But this worked. This was phenomenal. And it was funny because first I started with a smaller pie plate. And then I realized, oh no, I want to put it in a tart where I can move the sides. And I dug around and found one. So I had already rolled it out. And so I had to scrape it up again and roll it again. And it rolled. I did this 3 times. And it rolled great each time. I know. It's great. Good. I'm so glad. That's good to know. I just want to say something about that leek tart is that it actually, when I first started making it, I make it with onions, but I wanted to do it with leeks, but it's just as good with onions. I've made hundreds and hundreds of them with the onions. So try it again. Okay. I will. I love it. It's definitely a keeper. So it's a little more challenging because I have to make sure I have my almond ricotta on hand. I always make the cashew yogurt, so that's usually around. But I had planned it all in advance, so everything came together, and it was really quite lovely. The other one, which I just want to ask you about, because you have a buckwheat crepe with spicy applesauce recipe. I make buckwheat crepes all the time, and I use raw buckwheat groats, and I grind them in the Vitamix. And you talked about how that's
like very inconvenient. And I just wondered why you thought that.
Oh, well, I'm so sorry. I'm so impressed with the way you cook it.
I'm a nut.
Wow, you are definitely passionate about what you do and
I
very
am
healthy, but you're going to live way too long, so you better watch out.
Well, that's my plan, and I'm going to have that pizza oven when I do. Yeah.
I actually developed that recipe for, I mean, you probably noticed that the recipes, they're in what's called the Digging Deeper with Plant Family section.
Yeah,
so,
I meant to bring that up. I'm glad you did.
Yeah, no. So here was the challenge. So I really want gardeners and cooks to be thinking about plant families. Instead, we think about individual things like onions or broccolis or, apples or whatever. And instead there's the amaranth family and the cabbage family and the carrot family, which is the umbelliferæ. And what's nice about it, from Deborah Madison, who wrote that wonderful book, whose title I can't remember right now, but she divided all of her recipes by plant families. And I realized that's brilliant because if you wanted to substitute something, you'll know that, chard is in this same family, or, the lily family is also the onion family. So with the leek pie, you can substitute onions for leeks because they're all in the lily family. So each one of the recipes falls into certain categories. So going back to the buckwheat, I actually don't remember which family that's under. I'm looking at my book right now. I can't remember what family that's under, but it was a recipe that I know.
It's the knotweed family.
The knotweed. Okay, so who wants to eat knotweed? Nobody really. Knotweed is like that wild bamboo that we try and get rid of. It's the jointed family recipe. I mean, what else is in the knotweed family? I can't
Rhubarb and sorrel.
Rhubarb and sorrel. So I think I was probably grasping for some good ideas for what to put in that family, I'll be honest with you. But I like crepes, and so the idea for buckwheat crepes seemed to fit nicely.
We make them all the time, and I just use buckwheat and water. It's the easiest thing. And then I make applesauce a lot. We like to eat apples one a day at least, and then when the pandemic started, we started eating 2 apples a day. But I like making applesauce too. And I'm a purist, so I don't always like adding things to it, but I thought I'm going to try this spicy applesauce, and it's fabulous. And it doesn't even have a lot of the spices. It's just enough. Ginger, nutmeg, cinnamon, and cloves.
And lemon.
And lemon.
And that's from my grandmother. My grandmother used to make that as her dessert applesauce. And it was always had sort of a step up from just regular applesauce.
So I made the buckwheat crepes with the spicy applesauce, and I had leftover almond ricotta for making the leek tart, and that went on top, and it was heavenly.
Oh, wow. I'm coming to your house for dinner. That's great.
Yes. Well, one day when we can all be social again and you come to New York, let me know.
Great. Thank you.
You could bring me something from your garden and I'll whip something up.
That sounds great.
Okay. Well, I've really had fun talking about the new heirloom garden with you, Ellen. Anything else you want to share with us?
Oh gosh, no. I mean, I just think that it's been such a pleasure speaking with you, Karen. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I love food, and I think we should take care of our seeds and our planet.
Right. And think long-term in our gardens to, think about gardens as sanctuary space and not just a little raised bed to grow food. It's,
right.
It's more than that.
Put your bench there.
Thank you, Karen.
Okay. Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Well, that was a fun conversation talking about the new heirloom garden, designs, recipes, and heirloom plants for cooks who love to garden. And now I'm going to bring on the ultimate farmer in this house. Gardener, farmer, loves to cook. Who is it? It's Gary Mattei.
Karen Hartglass, it's great to be back on It's All About Food.
It's all about food. And you know what we talked about a little while ago?
What did you talk about?
Pizza ovens.
Yes.
Yes, I shared with everyone how much we want one.
Is perfect timing for this interview because a lot of folks are probably starting to think about planting their gardens.
Well, I would think so, at least in this neck of the woods.
And some folks are probably going to go out and buy a pizza oven.
Maybe, I don't know. I love the designs in this book and the ideas that she gives to include in your garden. And it includes art, works of art, just wrapping the garden, which creates food and nutrition, with beauty.
You know, and I like the description of the book. Design a beautiful and self-sufficient garden, learn the secrets of heirloom vegetables, herbs, and flowers, and enjoy 55 seasonal recipes featuring the fruits of your labor. All with one book.
All with one book. Now, what's interesting to me is she talked about saving seeds, which everybody, saving seeds is so important. And there's a brief description in the book on how to do this. You can't just collect seeds and put them in an envelope in a drawer.
We've tried that.
They need to be in a cool, dry place and sealed away from oxygen and moisture. And then when you're ready, you open them up and you get started. But heirloom seeds will grow a plant that is similar to its parents.
See, and that's the thing. When you save just a regular old seed and you go and plant it, which we've done.
It may not breed true.
Right. And a lot of the times, in the old days when we tried to start our garden out on the terrace, we would save some seeds and we'd try to plant them, and we did. And we'd get these great, big, beautiful plants coming out, but no fruit or no vegetable would grow on it.
Right.
Just the plant. That makes sense. You need an heirloom seed.
And there are so many varieties of the fruits and vegetables that we're familiar with and things that we're not familiar with.
Heirloom always kind of baffled me. When you say heirloom, you think the family jewels.
The family jewels.
Right? A valuable object that has belonged to a family for several generations. But also, if you go further into the definition in the dictionary, it denotes a traditional variety of plant which is not associated with large-scale commercial agriculture. And isn't that the elephant in the room here that we're talking about?
Yeah.
Isn't that the bad seed? Is
yes,
ironically large-scale commercial
industrial agriculture.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they grow animals as well as plants, and they do it wrong.
Well, we think they do.
And then they make getting seeds very difficult.
Well, this is like criminal.
Yeah.
The fact that they want to have you buy the seeds every year and not save them.
Right.
And in some cases, saving some of those genetically modified seeds are illegal.
So how long will it be before they get their grubby hands on the heirlooms?
Well, that's a good question. There are some big companies that have bought up the major seed companies, but there are many small groups, and she lists a lot of them in this book that are saving seeds.
See, that's a great reason to get the book right there, is to get that list. I think the pesticides and herbicides and the patent on seeds and all of that is not very nice.
No, it's not very nice.
No.
It's not nice. It's not...
Roundup ready. I mean, those poor folks that have to even handle that stuff.
Yeah, so the question is, when are we going to get a little piece of property to grow our garden, to make our garden grow?
After seeing this book and the plan, as you mentioned, for the Italian garden.
Yeah, you're sold?
The Italian garden, which includes the outdoor wood-fired pizza oven. I'm sold. I need to get a little piece of land now.
Okay, anybody out there got
Anybody
something?
out there have some land they want to get rid of? I grew up in a ranch-style house, and our backyard was my grandparents' cherry orchard. It was a very Chekhovian, as I like to say, upbringing. And I also watched the cherry orchard get chopped down when I was a teenager, and I've never been the same. So I'd love to get back there and start growing, get back to a bit of earth, and start growing some cherry trees and some vegetables. Because we had fresh cherries all the time, fresh vegetables all the time. It's a wonder that we weren't vegetarian, or at least...
What kind of vegetables did you grow?
Oh, my grandfather grew everything and my dad and my uncles, well, my dad and his twin brother, my Uncle Adolf, worked the land. The vegetables were, you name it, we grew it. Tomatoes, zucchini, cauliflower, cabbage, broccoli, chard, everything. There were plum trees, there were pear trees, there were cherry trees, as I mentioned. There were, fig trees. Fig trees are beautiful.
I'm just realizing one of the things I forgot to ask Ellen Ecker Ogden. In her book, she talks about sharing seeds, which is a lovely idea. And it's great to share seeds with your neighbors, somebody's growing one thing, somebody's growing something else.
Sure.
We're all learning together and sharing our successes and our failures. But you might travel somewhere and find something that you like. And she writes in the book that traveling with seeds, especially something you're interested in, is great, but just make sure it's legal.
Oh my goodness, right.
Because there are some seeds you are not allowed to either bring out of a country or bring into this country.
Wow.
I remember reading about, I think it was when I was talking about vanilla, that a long, long time ago, it was either vanilla or saffron, because I read those books close together. If you left your country or you left your area with it and brought it somewhere else, you could lose your life.
You could lose your life?
Okay, this was hundreds of years ago.
Oh my goodness. People were serious about keeping their seeds in their own country.
Yes, they were serious about their seeds. And I think we should be serious about our seeds too. Maybe not that extreme.
But protect our seeds from the evil industrial agriculture.
Yes, definitely need to protect our seeds.
This is definitely going into my next play, my next solo performance piece for collard greens who have considered pesticides when big agro is too rough.
Speaking of collard greens, I can't believe you brought this up, but she also mentioned in the book that there was a farm with over 90 varieties of collard greens.
Well, that's why I brought it up.
90 varieties.
Everything on this program is planned. That's why I brought it up. How can you have 90? That's wonderful. 90 varieties of...
Yeah, we see like one or two
in the grocery
stores.
Right.
And this one farm had over 90.
I want to grow them all.
I know. Don't you want to?
This piece of earth, this bit of earth, which is also a song from a musical, The Secret Garden. Thank you. I also want to get a little bit of earth and plant 90 varieties of collard greens. Go Organic was sending us a very small collard green. It was almost like a baby collard green. I bet that wasn't a baby collard green because when I cooked it, it was tender. It didn't take a long time to cook.
Maybe it was one of those 90 varieties. I think it
was a different variety. It was almost too good to be true with respect to collard greens because normally they take hours to cook and get the stems nice and soft. But this was wonderful. It was almost like the greens that we got at our favorite restaurant down the street, Green Zenfany, when we would order the greens. It was almost like a Chinese broccoli.
Yeah, I remember.
Remember those?
We get a little nutty here, folks, over our greens.
Over greens with garlic and ginger and a little bit of onions.
Speaking of greens.
Again,
we managed to pick up a head of escarole this week.
Yeah.
This is a valuable commodity, folks, especially the way we get our food these days where it's all delivered. But we managed to get our hands on a head of escarole. And do you love escarole?
I love escarole. The last time we had escarole was for a friend's birthday party when people were going to birthday parties. And yesterday in my Facebook memories, that dinner that I made you after that came up. I grilled some escarole, which gave it a nice charred taste. And I brushed it with a little lemon juice, fresh garlic, a little olive oil. But this was several years ago. 5-6 years ago when we were using olive oil. Put it on a bed of spicy marinara, sauteed with some black-eyed peas and onions, garlic, parsley, and lemon juice. And I finished the plate with a dome of steamed millet. This was a dinner that was inspired by that party we went to. So when you take escarole and you put it on the grill, it acts and behaves just like a meat does, and it's wonderful. It's chewy, it's tasty, it's delicious.
Okay, but this week you didn't do that.
This week I did it, but I put it under the broiler instead of...
you put it under the broiler.
Instead of on the grill. I put it under the broiler.
It was genius, and you served it with capers.
Yeah, I braised it first, and then I put a grill on a sheet pan and laid the sections of escarole on the grill on the sheet pan and then put it under the broiler, and it did the same thing because you are inspiring me not to cook with any oil these days for some strange reason. Why is that happening? But escarole is great.
Because oils are inflammatory and oils are unnecessary calories and oils are processed foods. What else can I tell you? We need fat, but we need fat
Right.
From healthy whole food sources like raw nuts and seeds and avocado and coconut.
And, you know, how do you talk to someone that asks you, how do you go vegan? I mean, there's so many ways to tell people how and or why we go vegan. I was approached by a friend and they asked me point blank, how did you do it? Did you do it cold turkey? Did you do it gradually? And I said, no, I did it cold turkey, which is a terrible phrase now since I've gone vegan to say cold turkey. So I did it cold tofu, or I did it cold tempeh. I also, at the same time, quit smoking.
You could say cold tofurkey.
Yeah, I did it cold tofurkey. And then, you know, you try to inspire them to do the same thing, but how do you not come off sounding smug and indignant? I think right away, when you tell someone you're vegan, there's this immediate reaction that someone has. So then do you say, well, I'm plant-based, because you don't want to say vegan because that's too intimidating? I mean, we've talked about these things before. This is recently that somebody has asked me this because...
But they came to you, Gary.
Right. And a lot of people, my point is, a lot of people are wanting to do this. And they're wanting to go vegan. There's a lot more folks out there that are trying to take the plunge. What do you say to someone when they say, I want to go vegan, but I don't know if I can? Can you recommend some things for me to do? Because this is a great topic, especially now when folks are getting ready to plant their gardens and put in their pizza ovens and buy some cookbooks and veganize dishes, which is what you did with Ellen's book here. You veganized the tart, the Leek tart, which we talked about last week and you've talked about before.
And I plan on veganizing more recipes in this book because they're just beautiful and I'm challenged by it.
Right. And the reason that I made this escarole dish was because I really wanted to continue to grill things. I used to love to grill food. And grilling vegetables is wonderful and can be used. A vegetable is certainly a fabulous main course. And that big, huge wedge of escarole that was grilled.
That escarole steak.
Yeah, really, which is what it was. That chewy escarole steak was served with beans and...
Yeah, my next request for you, we have a cauliflower in the refrigerator. You can make a cauliflower steak, right?
And our friend Linda Long wrote a book called Great Chefs Cook Vegan, and that's one of the recipes in her book that I...
The cauliflower steak?
Absolutely adore. I have to do that cauliflower steak again because that is...
Yes.
That's another one where you
so many recipes, too little time.
Well, you know who makes a great cauliflower, as far as if you go to a restaurant, is that restaurant we went to in Palo Alto. We've taken friends there.
True Food Kitchen.
Yeah, they have a great cauliflower appetizer, and they use tahini, and there's a dried fruit in there mixed with olives. They use tahini and like a dried cherry or a dried...
Yeah, I'll have to check my blog to see.
It's delicious.
Yeah, really good. I hope we can go there again.
It's a tahini sauce.
Back to going vegan.
Yeah, how do you...
For some people... It's obvious and easy, and for some people it isn't. And I think for people who know how to cook, it might be easier. Because they cook, they know what's in food, they know they can leave something out or put something in, and they're comfortable in the kitchen.
Right.
For people who don't know how to cook, it's just an extra level of challenge.
Yeah, and this person had a lot of pressure on them because they have children, and their parents are they're the parents that think that meat has to be served at every single meal. This person has got a lot of pressure from their parent asking, are you on this crazy vegan kick? Are you killing your children? Are you killing my grandchildren by not feeding them meat? What do you say to someone like that? Obviously, you don't need meat to survive. So one of my recommendations was, and they had already started reading the book, The China Study by a friend of yours, T. Colin Campbell, the great T. Colin Campbell. And I said, yes, great book to read. But also, there's a lot of wonderful film now that you can watch.
Makes it easy to digest.
And I said, watch The Game Changers.
Yeah.
That's a great film to watch, and it has convinced a lot of folks to at least cut way back.
So when it comes to raising children,
Right.
I spoke with Brenda Davis and Reshma Shah a couple of months ago. They have a great book out called Nourish. And they specifically and intentionally did not say you have to go vegan. But they show you how you can eat plant-based, even completely vegan, and raise children healthfully. And that it's even a healthier way to go.
Right.
So if somebody like your friend is raising children, this would be a great book.
Yes. Okay, well...
But for parents or grandparents who are so entrenched in their traditions and are not open to change...
They need some serious convincing.
It's challenging because it really depends on the individuals. You could give them a few scientific studies if they're open to scientific studies, or give them a book or a documentary. It really depends on who they are, where they're coming from, what they'd be open to. And then some people, they just can't budge.
Right. I thought it was wonderful too, because the snack that my friend would feed their children was meat-based, salami, cheese, snackable things. And now my friend is changing it up and giving almonds, and the kids are loving it. Almonds and dried fruit and bananas and peanut butter and things of that nature.
Sweet.
And the kids are enjoying it even more. And this is a person that isn't completely convinced yet that this is the direction that they are going to go in. But I wanted to bring that up with you today because I know a lot of people are listening are probably dealing with these questions. No, you don't need meat to get protein. I mean, that is something... That's
such an old story
already. People still
yeah,
feel that they have to have it. And the other big myth, which is also covered in the Game Changers, is the myth about soy. And I know we've talked about it forever on this program, but it was just asked to me again by this person, and they were unsure about soy. And I said, no. The kind of soy that's in tofu, for example, is the good soy.
Right. And soy kind of helps you balance how much estrogen you have roaming around in your body. And if you have too much, it helps you manage that. And if you have too little, it helps you manage that.
So there's still these myths out there that people are picking up on because they're not listening to our program.
You know that I review a lot of programs. That's a consulting job I do for other organizations. And I review these webinars and programs that are available for purchase online. And I still see the myths being propagated by some of these people. And soy was a recent one.
Yes. And that's why I brought it up again, because I thought it went away. But no. People, it's...
So the important thing you need to know is, number one, you don't need to consume soy, but it can be part of a healthy diet. Absolutely. And it's a fun food, and you can do a lot of things with it. Number two, it must be organic. Must be organic, because a lot of soy is grown in this country that's genetically modified. But what people forget is most of the genetically modified soy that is grown here is grown to feed animals. That's where most of the genetically modified soy is going. So you want organic soy. A lot of the soy products I see in the stores are organic. Some of them won't be organic, but they'll say non-genetically modified. That's okay too. I just prefer organic.
So that brings up a great question about heirloom vegetables. Because I've gone to grocery stores when I used to go to grocery stores before this pandemic, and there were heirloom tomatoes, for example, but they weren't necessarily organic.
Well, that is a good question. There may be some farms that are growing heirloom products, and they don't want to go to the trouble of getting their organic certification. So they may not be organic, but they may be grown organically.
Right. So EcoWatch.com just says, in most cases, heirloom plants are organic because they are generally only used by small-scale gardeners who do not use pesticides or other harmful chemicals. Do your research before you buy your heirloom seeds. Make sure it's one of the good guys instead of one of the bad guys.
Ellen interviews different people in this book. And there was a quote from one of them that I want to share with everyone. This is from Dr. William Woys Weaver, an heirloom seed historian. And he says, seeds are food waiting to happen because you can't eat without seeds.
You know what really bugs me? Watermelon without seeds.
You know, we talked about a variety of watermelon, Moon and Stars, which is an heirloom seed melon. And the seeds for the Moon and Stars had a story in here how they were rescued in 1981. Moon and Stars, I think, requires a long day in the sun. So you can't grow them everywhere.
Rescuing
seeds, yeah.
Wow, people have to rescue seeds now.
Yeah, there are a lot of good stories in this book about that. And the word heirloom, how it's something like a jewel that's treasured and passed down from generation to generation. That's exactly what these seeds are. They are jewels. We don't put enough value to them, but they are more valuable than the jewels people wear.
Oh, yeah.
Because you can't eat a diamond or a gold ring. The seeds can feed you. You know, there's that saying, teach a man to fish and blah, 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 blah. No, it's teach people to save their seeds and learn how to grow them.
Exactly. Think about it. There was victory gardens all during the war. We're in another war, and it's the war that we need to fight just as desperately, and that's the war to save the seeds. So if everybody had their own little heirloom garden, it would be something beautiful, don't you think? I mean,
I do.
And, you know, we've all heard about how people have their lawns, but I mean, what's better than having a nice little heirloom garden in your front yard?
I mentioned this earlier in the program, but there are actually some communities that have rules and regulations and don't allow you to grow food
in your front yard.
Your garden. But edible gardens can be gorgeous.
Yes.
And we all need to be going that way. So everybody who has a little bit of property, you should be required to have an edible garden.
And what she does in this book is she gives you, as you mentioned, these little plans to make these gorgeous little gardens.
Yes.
With pizza ovens.
Only one
at
of them
the center.
had pizza only one of them had a pizza oven, but most of them have benches.
Benches. Yes.
To sit and enjoy. Gary, the last thing I wanted to say before we close this out, I want to give my gratitude to the Svalbard Global Seed Vault in Norway.
Wow.
They are saving seeds from all over the world, all kinds of varieties, and they're doing it in this vault, which protects the seeds from temperature and humidity. And I thank them.
That is beautiful. And I want to thank you. You know, yesterday was International Women's Day. And I know I'm going to embarrass you when I say this.
I'm an international woman.
I'm going to embarrass you when I say this, but you are one amazing human being, and you also happen to be an amazing woman.
Thank
you. And you are my idol. And so I honor you on International Women's Day, and I honor you every day. Thank you for doing this program.
I'm every woman. It's all in me.
Yeah. So thank you for the work that you do, and thank you for allowing me to do it with you. Go out there and appreciate the amazing women that make things happen in this world.
Appreciate all the amazing people that do all the amazing things.
Yes, all of the amazing people, yes. But it's just one of those days that people like to say, this is International Women's Day.
I remember when we would celebrate Mother's Day or Father's Day, and we'd say, when is their Children's Day? And my mother would say, every day is Children's Day. And there probably is a Children's Day now. Who knows? Every day has holidays. Yeah. But we should all be celebrated every day.
Yeah, the people that do good, definitely.
Yes.
And you do good, and that's why I'm celebrating you. And if I need a reason and an excuse to say it on the air, then I'll use the excuse that it was International Women's Day yesterday, so I am celebrating you and all of the great work that you do.
Thank you, Gary. All right, everybody, you've been listening to It's All About Food. I'm Karen Hartglass, and I'm here with Gary Mattei.
Hi, everybody. Bye, everybody.
Hi, and bye, everybody.
Have a delicious week.